It is 3 a.m. and you are awake staring at the ceiling. There is a knot in your stomach that feels vaguely like panic. You have done everything right. You followed the script. You went to school, you got the degree, you found the job, and you started climbing the ladder. But no matter how hard you work, the finish line keeps moving. The house you want costs 20% more than it did last year. The vacation your friends are posting on Instagram looks completely out of reach. You feel like you are running on a treadmill that is slowly speeding up, and you are terrified that if you trip, you will be thrown off completely. We need to talk about that feeling. We need to talk about why money feels so confusing, and why the pursuit of it often leaves us feeling empty rather than secure. There is a saying that goes, how you view money determines whether you control your life or your life controls you. Today, we are going to dive deep into a book that might just save your sanity. It is called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. This is not a boring finance textbook filled with charts and stock tips. It is a book about how our brains work. It is about the strange, messy, and often irrational relationship we have with wealth. It challenges the very foundation of what we think it means to be successful in the United States today. By the end of this conversation, I hope to shift your perspective from chasing status to building freedom. Let me tell you a story that sounds like a fable, but is actually entirely true. It is the story of two men who lived completely different lives and met completely different ends. The first man was named Ronald Read. Ronald was not a Wall Street wolf. He was not a tech disruptor. He was a janitor and a gas station attendant in rural Vermont. He lived a quiet, unassuming life. He chopped his own firewood. He drove a second-hand Toyota Yaris. He wore flannel shirts and blended into the background. When he died in 2014, at the age of 92, the people in his small town were sad, but they were not surprised by his humble passing. That is, until his will was read. It turned out that Ronald Read, the janitor, had amassed a net worth of over $8 million. There was no secret illegal activity. He did not win the lottery. He did not inherit a fortune. All he did was save what little he could from his meager wages and buy blue-chip stocks. Then he waited. He waited for decades. He let the magic of compound interest do the heavy lifting while he lived his simple, happy life. He left most of that $8 million to his local library and hospital. Now let us look at the second man. His name was Richard Fuscone. Richard was everything Ronald was not. Richard was a Harvard-educated executive at Merrill Lynch. He was successful, charismatic, and incredibly smart. He had a Master of Business Administration and a resume that would make any recruiter weep with joy. In the finance world, he was a titan. He retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. He borrowed heavily to expand his massive 18,000 square foot mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. This house was so large, it had 2 swimming pools, 2 elevators, and 7 garages. It cost $90,000 a month just to maintain. Richard lived the high life, throwing lavish parties and projecting the image of absolute success. Then the 2008 financial crisis hit. In the blink of an eye, Richard Fuscone lost everything. His high-leverage lifestyle collapsed under the weight of debt and illiquid assets. He filed for personal bankruptcy. The mansion with the 2 swimming pools was foreclosed on and sold for pennies on the dollar. The janitor left behind millions for charity. The Harvard executive left behind a legacy of ruin. What does this tell us? It tells us that finance is the only field where a person with no education and no experience can outperform someone with the best education and the best connections simply because of how they behave. You could not imagine a janitor performing open-heart surgery better than a Harvard-trained surgeon. You could not imagine a janitor designing a skyscraper better than a trained architect. But in the world of money, behavior beats intelligence every single time. Doing well with money has a little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. And behavior is hard to teach even to really smart people. This brings us to the first major trap that Morgan Housel identifies in the book. It is the trap of never enough. Let us travel back to 1929. There was a man named Jesse Livermore. He was the greatest stock trader of his day. He was a genius at reading the market. During the crash of 1929, when almost everyone else was losing their life savings, Jesse Livermore made a bet that the market would fall. In one single day, he made the equivalent of $3 billion in today's money. He came home to his wife, who was terrified that they were ruined, and he told her that they were actually richer than they had ever been. He had more money than he could ever spend. He had won the game. But here is the tragic twist. It was not enough. Jesse Livermore became overconfident. He felt invincible. He kept placing bigger and bigger bets, unable to walk away from the table. Within 4 years, he had lost every single cent. Deep in debt and broken by the pressure, he eventually took his own life. Fast forward to modern times and look at Rajat Gupta. He was the chief executive officer of McKinsey, the most prestigious consulting firm in the world. He was worth $100 million. He had everything a person could dream of. He had respect, power, and generational wealth. But he was envious of the billionaires he rubbed shoulders with. Being a multi-millionaire was not enough for him. He wanted to be in the billion-dollar club. So he used insider information to make illegal trades. He was caught, he went to prison, and his reputation was destroyed forever. Why do smart people do this? Why do we risk what we have and need for what we do not have and do not need? It is because the goalpost stops moving. It is the hardest financial skill in the world to get the goalpost to stop moving. In our modern culture, specifically in the United States, we are driven by capitalism to always want more. If you get the promotion, you immediately want the next one. If you buy the starter home, you immediately start looking at the bigger house in the better school district. We look at social media and we see the highlight reels of everyone else. We see their vacations, their cars, their seemingly perfect lives, and we feel poor by comparison, even if we are doing objectively well. This comparison game is a battle you can never win. There will always be someone richer. There will always be someone younger with more success. If you cannot find a way to say this is enough, then you will never be happy no matter how much money you make. Think about the last time you got a raise. You probably felt great for about a month. Then your lifestyle adjusted. You started buying slightly better coffee, you subscribed to a few more services, maybe you leased a nicer car. Suddenly that extra money was gone, absorbed into the new normal. That is lifestyle creep, and it is the enemy of wealth. Housel argues that we need to realize that enough is not about settling for less. It is about realizing that the opposite of enough is not more. The opposite of enough is ruin. It is risking your reputation, your freedom, and your peace of mind to chase a number that will not actually change your happiness. So how do we fix this? How do we step off this hedonic treadmill? We have to stop looking over our neighbor's fence. In the age of the internet, your neighbor is not just the person living next door. Your neighbor is Elon Musk. Your neighbor is that 22-year-old crypto millionaire on TikTok. Comparing yourself to them is a recipe for misery. We have to define our own game. We have to decide what we actually want out of life, not what society tells us we should want. Ask yourself, what actually makes you happy? Is it a bigger house, or is it the freedom to spend your Sunday afternoon doing absolutely nothing without feeling guilty? Is it a luxury car, or is it the security of knowing that if you lost your job tomorrow, you would be okay for a year. The most important financial skill is the ability to stop moving the goalpost. It is the ability to look at what you have and say, I am good. I have enough. Because if you cannot do that, you will end up like Jesse Livermore or Richard Fusconi chasing a ghost until it leads you off a cliff. But recognizing you have enough is only the first step. The next trap is even more subtle, and it is one that almost every single one of us falls into without even realizing it. It involves the cars we drive, the clothes we wear, and the desperate need we have to be respected by strangers. Think about the last time you saw a bright red Ferrari driving down the street, or maybe a customized G-Wagon pulling into a valet stand. Or perhaps you were scrolling through your feed and saw an influencer posting a photo from a private jet or unboxing a $50,000 Birkin bag. What is the first thought that goes through your head? If you are honest with yourself, you probably do not look at the driver or the influencer and think to yourself, wow, that specific person is so wise and impressive. I bet they are a great friend. No. You look at the car. You look at the bag. You imagine yourself in the driver's seat. You imagine yourself holding that bag. You fantasize about how people would look at you if you owned that object. You think if I had that car, people would think I am successful. People would respect me. This is what Morgan Housel calls the man in the car paradox, and it is the second major trap that keeps us broke and unhappy. We have this backward belief that we can buy respect. We think that if we surround ourselves with the symbols of success, the designer clothes, the luxury apartment, the high-end watch, that the world will finally give us the validation we crave. We use money as a signal. We broadcast our status to the world, hoping that the signal says, I made it. But here is the brutal truth. When you buy expensive things to gain respect, you do not actually get the respect. The object gets the respect. When you drive that Ferrari, people are staring at the Ferrari. They are admiring the engineering, the horsepower, and the shine. They are projecting their own dreams onto the metal and rubber. You are just the invisible mannequin sitting inside it. You are an obstacle to their fantasy. The irony is painful. You spent a fortune to be noticed, but the very thing you bought to make you visible actually makes you disappear. We are all guilty of this. We live in a culture that runs on external validation. We are constantly told that we are what we consume. If you do not have the latest iPhone, are you even tech savvy? If you do not have the brand name sneakers, do you even have style? We are chasing a feeling of admiration that can never be bought. Housel writes that humility, kindness, and empathy will bring you more respect than horsepower ever will. If your goal is to be respected by people whose opinions actually matter, then you do not need a six-figure car. You need character. But character is hard to build and a car is easy to finance. So we choose the easy path, and we end up feeling emptier than before. This leads us directly into the third concept, which is perhaps the most important mindset shift in the entire book. It is the distinction between being rich and being wealthy. In the English language, we tend to use these two words interchangeably. If we say someone is rich or someone is wealthy, we usually mean the same thing. But in the psychology of money, they are two completely different concepts. Let me tell you about a guy named Roger. Roger was someone the author knew years ago. He was young, he was flashy, and he drove a Porsche. In Los Angeles or Miami or New York, Roger is a familiar archetype. He pulled up to every stoplight with the windows down. He looked like the picture of the American dream. He projected an image of effortless success. People looked at him and thought, wow, he must be rolling in money. Then one day the Porsche was gone. It was replaced by a beat-up Honda. It turned out that Roger was not actually wealthy. He was just high income and high spend. He was living on the razor's edge of solvency. When he missed a few car payments, the bank came and repossessed his status symbol. The illusion shattered instantly. This happens every single day across the United States. We see the cars. We see the square footage of the houses. We see the vacations to Tulum and the Amalfi Coast. We judge success by what we can see. But here is the reality check. Wealth is what you do not see. Wealth is the nice car not purchased. Wealth is the diamonds not bought. Wealth is the first-class upgrade that you declined so you could invest the difference. Wealth is the money that is sitting in your investment accounts, compounding quietly in the background unobserved by anyone but you and your bank. This is a very difficult concept for us to grasp because we are visual creatures. We learn by imitation. If you want to learn how to play basketball, you watch LeBron James and you try to move like him. If you want to learn how to cook, you watch Gordon Ramsay and you copy his techniques. But how do you learn to be wealthy if wealth is invisible? You cannot see someone's bank account. You cannot see their 401k balance. You cannot see their freedom. When you see someone driving a $100,000 car, the only thing you know for sure is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought the car. Or even worse, they have $100,000 in debt. That is the only data point you have. You do not know if they are wealthy. You only know they are rich. Rich is a current income level. It is the money flowing in and flowing out. It is peacocking. It is loud. Wealth is income not spent. It is an option. It is the flexibility to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. It is the power to walk away from a toxic job because you have 3 years of living expenses saved up. It is the ability to weather a medical emergency without spiraling into bankruptcy. The problem is that because we cannot see wealth, we do not aspire to it. We aspire to be rich instead. We see the spending, so we copy the spending. We buy the things we think successful people have, not realizing that the truly successful people, the ones with sustainable generational wealth, often look incredibly boring. They are the ones wearing the generic t-shirts. They are the ones driving the 5-year-old sedans. They are the ones who seem totally unimpressed by luxury brands. They are not trying to prove anything to anyone because they know the score. They know that the most valuable asset you can buy is not a car. It is freedom. Think about the pressure we feel from social media. It is an engine designed to make us feel inadequate. We see the highlight reels of everyone else's spending. We see the shiny objects. We rarely see the stress, the debt payments, the sleepless nights, and the anxiety that often accompanies that high consumption lifestyle. We are comparing our behind-the-scenes reality with everyone else's carefully curated trailer. If you want to win the money game, you have to stop trying to look rich and start trying to become wealthy. You have to become comfortable with being underestimated. You have to be okay with people thinking you have less than you actually do. You have to derive satisfaction from the growing number in your investment account rather than the compliments you get on your outfit. This is not about being a miser. It is not about living like a monk and never enjoying your money. It is about intention. It is about understanding that every dollar you spend on a status symbol to impress strangers is a dollar you are stealing from your own future freedom. When you spend money to look rich, you are trading your time for things. You work hard to earn money, then you give that money away to car companies and fashion brands in exchange for a temporary dopamine hit. But when you save money, when you build wealth, you are buying time. You are buying the option to retire early. You are buying the option to switch careers. You are buying the option to spend more time with your family. And that leads us to the final and perhaps most profound realization of the book. What is the actual point of all this saving? Why should we forego the nice car and the fancy clothes? Is it just to die with a big number in the bank? No. It is because money yields a dividend that is far more valuable than any luxury good. It yields the dividend of control. We are going to talk about what that freedom looks like and how to restructure your life to prioritize it. Because in a world where 45% of people report feeling burned out and stressed despite having more stuff than any generation in history, we have to ask ourselves if we are optimizing for the wrong thing. We have been chasing happiness in the mall when we should have been chasing autonomy. We live in a culture that loves to scream, "You only live once." The logic usually goes something like this. You cannot take money with you when you die, so you might as well spend it all now. Why save for a future that is not guaranteed? Why deny yourself that trip to Vegas or that designer watch when life is short? It is a seductive argument. It makes spending feel like an act of rebellion, but it misses the single most important point about money. The true value of money is not about buying more stuff to enjoy before you die. The true value of money is that it buys you control. This is the fourth and final pillar of the psychology of money. Wealth is the ability to wake up every single morning and say, "I can do whatever I want today." There was a massive study conducted by the University of Michigan. They wanted to know what actually makes people happy. They looked at everything. They analyzed income levels, geography, education, IQ, and relationship status. They crunched the data, expecting to find a correlation between high salaries and high happiness. But that is not what they found. The single strongest predictor of happiness, more than how much you make, more than how big your house is, more than how attractive your spouse is having a strong sense of control over your life. It is the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want. If you earn a massive salary, but you have to work 80 hours a week answering emails at midnight and missing your child's soccer games, you are not free. You are a well-paid prisoner. You have sold your autonomy for a paycheck. On the other hand, if you make a modest income, but you have zero debt and a year of expenses in the bank, you are the master of your own destiny. Money gives you options, and options are the oxygen of a happy life. Let us break down what savings actually represent. When you have no savings, you have to take the first job offered to you, regardless of the pay or the toxic culture. You are desperate. When you have 6 months of expenses saved, you can look your boss in the eye and negotiate. You can walk away from a bad situation. You can take time to find work that fulfills you. When you have 5 years of expenses saved, work becomes optional. You stop working because you have to, and you start working because you want to. The dynamic shifts completely. You are no longer a cog in the machine, you are the operator of the machine. Think about the progress we have made as a society. Compared to our grandparents or great-grandparents, we are astronomically richer. The average American home today is nearly twice the size of the average home in the 1950s. We have better food, better medicine, safer cars, and technology that our ancestors would consider magic. By all objective metrics, we should be the happiest generation in history. But we are not. In fact, rates of anxiety and depression are through the roof. Surveys show that nearly half of us feel constantly stressed and overwhelmed. Why? Why are we so miserable amidst so much abundance? It is because we used our increased wealth to buy bigger stuff instead of buying more control. We bought the bigger house, but that meant taking on a bigger mortgage, which meant we had to work longer hours and commute further distances. We bought the luxury car, but that meant we could not afford to take a sabbatical. We traded our time for things. We gave up control of our calendars to acquire objects that eventually just became background noise in our lives. We lost the plot. We forgot that the highest form of wealth is not a number on a spreadsheet. It is an empty calendar. In the book, Housel references another fascinating text titled 30 Lessons for Living. In this book, the author interviewed 1,000 elderly Americans. These were people in their 80s and 90s, approaching the end of their journey. The author asked them a simple question: what matters? What are the most important lessons you learned from a century of living? You know what they did not say. Not a single person said, "I wish I had worked more." Not a single person said, "I wish I had bought a bigger house." Not a single person said, "I wish I had spent more money on luxury items to impress my neighbors." Nobody cares about that stuff at the end. It all fades away. What they talked about was time. They talked about sitting on the porch with their spouse. They talked about watching their kids grow up. They talked about doing work that felt meaningful rather than just profitable. They valued the autonomy to choose how they spent their days. The tragedy is that we often realize this too late. We spend our prime years running on a treadmill, chasing a version of success that does not actually make us happy, only to realize at the finish line that we were running in the wrong direction. So what does the author Morgan Housel actually do with his own money? If he is so wise, does he live in a cave and eat rice and beans? No. But his lifestyle is intentionally boring. His income has increased significantly over the years as he became a successful investor and writer. But his spending has not moved. He lives in a standard house. He drives a standard car. He wears simple clothes. He does not have a collection of watches or a garage full of toys. His hobbies are walking, reading, listening to podcasts, and spending time with his family. These things cost almost nothing. He calls this suffering from a lack of imagination. Critics might say he does not know how to enjoy his money, but he would argue that he enjoys his money more than anyone because he uses it to buy the only thing that matters: freedom. He has structured his life so that he never has to do anything he does not want to do. He has removed the financial worry from his life completely. He defines success in a way that I think is beautiful and profound. He says, "True success is exiting some rat race to modulate one's activities for peace of mind. Success is not winning the competition. Success is realizing you do not have to compete. It is withdrawing from the status game entirely. It is realizing that you do not need to keep up with the Joneses because the Joneses are broke and stressed out." So where does this leave us? We have covered 4 big ideas today. First, we talked about the trap of never enough and how you need to stop moving the goalpost. Second, we discussed the man in the car paradox and how buying things to gain respect never works. Third, we learned the difference between being rich, which is loud and flashy, and being wealthy, which is quiet and invisible. And finally, we realized that the ultimate purpose of wealth is to buy you freedom and control over your time. If you can internalize these 4 pillars, you will stop seeing money as a source of stress and start seeing it as a tool for liberation. You will stop buying things you do not need to impress people you do not like. You will start building a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. It is a quiet revolution. It starts with you looking at your bank account not as a scorecard, but as a freedom fund. I hope this deep dive into the psychology of money has sparked something in you. Maybe it is a relief to know you do not have to chase the hype. Maybe it is a challenge to rethink your spending. If this conversation resonated with you, if you felt that shift in perspective, do me a favor. Hit that like button, it helps more than you know. And share this with a friend who is feeling the pressure of the rat race. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is permission to step off the treadmill. I want to hear from you in the comments. What is your enough? What is the thing you are chasing that maybe you do not actually need? Let us talk about it down there. Until next time, keep building your freedom, not just your bank account.